when it's wet, you'll try to put detail and it'll just take it away. It just disappears. What was that?
I said, I certainly noticed that.
So I tend to work on several pieces at one time. So I'm going to show you a few. I started one this morning. I'm going to work on, let's see, let me show you. These are a few starts of paintings.
Beautiful.
And so I'll start with like 3 or 4. Sometimes I'll have up to 10 or 15 actually on my desk here, and I just move around and keep going back to, and work on them in layers. So this is the first layer, and then this is one that is almost done. It just has a few little more details to put in here, and to punch up my darks and my lights. But and I'm going to start one from the beginning. So you see the beginning, I'll work on the second one that's in the mid process. I'll work on this one so you can see what the second layer looks like and how it starts to be realized. And then I'm going to show you a few details on this one. So you get a little familiarity with trusting. I think the hardest part is trusting that process, that you're building something up in the way that I'm painting. So this is called a wet in wet process. I don't do any sketches beforehand. I collect my images. So a lot of people have worked from photographs, and I do. And I got, you can see I've got this Anna's hummingbird. And then I'm using, these are currant, I wrote it on the back, red currant flowers, which the Anna's hummingbird will feed on. So I do a little research. I didn't do as much research in the beginning, and my paintings a couple years ago were mostly just the hummingbird or the bird with just a twig, and I would just focus on the bird. But since in the last couple of years, I've been adding more and more foliage, and with this downtime, which has been really interesting, I've been reaching out to photographers. So you just collect thousands of images on Pinterest basically and use boards. And then I would go back and I'd pick an image that I thought was like, wow, that captures that bird or that personality. And recently I've been using Instagram, which I'm on pretty regularly. I have a presence on, and I've started reaching out to photographers because I really think that's where some of the most amazing wildlife photography is right now. And so I reached out to a bunch of photographers and asked them if they mind if I use their images in my work. Now, technically, I don't have to, because if you change the work 10 or 15%, you don't have to ask people for permission. But I don't know. I wanted to open up my process and how I do things, and I also wanted to connect with these photographers because it starts to become a collaboration. And I feel like the work is becoming much stronger because of that. And I'm going to show you a couple pieces that I've done.
Holly, can I add that you talked about how influenced you are by community and collaboration, and so it made so much sense that you would reach out to the other artists.
Yeah, and it's starting to build these interesting relationships. So this is one that I finished last week or earlier this week. This is another, if you can see this.
Yeah.
There we go.
The iridescence is
that's just
beautiful.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's I don't know, it's strengthened the work. It's strengthened. I think I talk a lot about, and we'll talk about this, and that I really believe that art making is about building a relationship. So by building a relationship with the people that are taking these images, it's strengthening my work. And also some of the writings that they do. There's a couple of people that write about the birds, and it's just really beautiful. So building a relationship, go back to building a relationship. It's like we're building a relationship with the paints, you know, what even our palettes, our paper and our brushes. And as the more that we do, the deeper that gets. And I think the stronger that the artwork becomes as we get more intimate with all of these materials. So I'm going to I showed you my reference materials here.
I want to interrupt and add something.
Oh, yeah.
just I just kind of want to spotlight when you said building a relationships with the paint, the palette, and the brushes. I feel like when I try to scooch past this, like I'm glad you said it, because I feel like that's where an enormous amount of the work is, and I think we sometimes forget it and we go right to like, how do we fix this picture, or we might consider a picture a failure because of how it looks, and not realize that every time we invest in those relationships you just talked about, I feel like that is always an accomplishment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because even it's just like understanding how much water you need in your brush, you know, or don't need in your brush, or how much paint you need in your brush or don't need in your brush. You know, I mean, it's just, all of those affects the what you're trying to get on the paper. And it also, you know, it also goes to that, what, you know, as it comes in through you, like, so for me, I want this loose feel, and I want these bubbles, you know, this movement and looseness around. But someone might want something that's very tight. You know, they don't want that freedom in the watercolor, and let it do what it does. And that can just be the personality of the person. So understanding what you can do, you know, it just goes to building your own artistic language. So with that, I highly recommend Arch's watercolor paper. For I'll show you guys. I don't know what you're using, but
well, Holly, I want to fill you in for a moment on what we're using. Or no, you can keep it there, but just to say, like, ours is not, I think of it as not actually a watercolor class. It's a sketch class where we happen to use watercolors. So we use materials that would horrify you, perhaps. No, some of us, like crappy moleskin, like really lightweight paper. A lot of us do use watercolor books, but we don't typically, as a group, we don't typically work on actual watercolor paper. But please go ahead. I just wanted to give that like disclaimer.
These sketchbooks are on the moleskin watercolor.
Okay, yeah.
Then definitely recommend, at least, you know, if your sketchbook's watercolor paper. But if you want to take it outside of the sketchbook, say you want to do some work, it really does help to have a little better paper, because you can abuse this paper in ways that you can't abuse other papers.
Holly, tell us again which kind of arches you like.
Was that
yeah, I use the cold press.
Thank you.
Cold press. If you want to use hot press, it'll be a little smooth. It'll be smoother, more control. Okay, so let's get started here. I'm just going to clean off an area of my palette. Now these are the colors that I used for this piece here. And I'm going to leave those on there because I actually can paint from that. That's enough paint to paint, you know, to work back into this. And I don't want to lose that palette that I worked hard to get. So I'm going to leave these colors here because we're going to work on that piece. I'm just going to clean this off.
And I'm using that big. Tell us. Sorry, you go ahead.
Oh yeah, you're right. So this is just a flat brush that I use I'll wet the paper with this too. And I use an enamel palette. And I highly recommend an enamel palette, or even just like a white plate, porcelain plate, or, you know, a ceramic plate versus the plastic palettes, because the water will beat up on you. And so like, I don't recommend, you know, like one of these little palettes, these little plastic, I have these for just teaching, or my daughter. But when you paint, these little porcelain palettes or a plate are great because the water doesn't beat up on you. The paint actually sits.
I'm making all of these notes, by the way. I'm putting in the notes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'm going to look at this here, and I'm just going to spend the first few minutes just mixing my colors. So I'm going to try to get these.
Did you wet the paper?
I haven't wet the paper yet because I want it to be wet when I start the paint. So first I'm gonna mix some colors. Here. So now when I think about color, I think about it, a lot of it is temperature versus the actual color. So you're always going to want like a cool red, which is to be like an alizarin crimson, or say maybe a permanent magenta. A warm red, which is like a cad light, or something like that. Then I'm just creating a family of colors that I see on this bird.
I love seeing the paint on your palette.
It's a fun. So I'm going to pull this over here.
Just seeing that, the warm red and the cool red right there next to each other. It feels so outrageously wet to me and scary.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm amazed by how the loose, you alluded to this a little bit when we were talking all together, Holly, that it is by loosening up that you'll get more precise.
Yeah. Yeah. Even in, like, if you'll notice when you're painting, just holding your brush at the back end, you only hold your brush right here when you're doing like fine, tiny little details at the end. But really you want to have like a loose grip. It creates an energy. A lot of the energy is coming out of your arm. It's not coming from your hand, believe it or not. And the details. You'll get a much more precise line by loosening that up. It's worth just taking a piece of paper and practicing. Getting some yellows over here. I think this is kind of a viridian green. Yeah.
It looks like it, doesn't it? Like,
Yeah, it does a little bit. I'm gonna put a little bit of blue. Indigo blue is like my go-to. I love indigo blue and black, and I mix them. Some people have a no-no with watercolor, with using black, but coming from my oil painting roots, I use black as a blue. In my oil paintings, I just use a primary color palette, and I mix it, and I have different values of blues, reds, and yellows, and I mix all my purples and greens. But for my watercolors, I do use a larger palette.
so indigo blue is something you rely on a lot?
Indigo blue and a lamp black, yeah, and ultramarine, maybe a cerulean. But indigo blue is like my favorite. I don't know if you can see it. It's almost, actually, I've run out of the Japanese one because I use so much of it, and it's hard for me. I can't get, but this is the one I'm using now, which is a Winsor Newton, which is a really lovely indigo. And I even have a little bit on my palette here because I use so much of it.
It's so fun. Has it been there all along on your palette?
Yeah.
Funny, because I didn't, now I see it, but my eye did not notice it before.
Okay, so let me see that.
This is so great to be able to see it here, and even that little bit, like that you use so much of the indigo blue, you have it in the tube.
Yeah, I can't. I just love it, and it just makes. I will add. You'll notice I'll add a little yellow, or I'll add a little. I'll never use the pure color from the palette. I'll always use a little bit of either the complementary color or another, like a yellow, or I'll put a little yellow in the green or a little blue in the green, just to tone that acidity of this, like a tube color. And the reason I mix the colors beforehand is because, again, I'm building that relationship with the piece. So I'm really looking and seeing what's there. So when I go to paint, it doesn't take me out of the right brain as much. Whereas the paint mixing might be a little more analytical. It really keeps me in the flow of just moving and seeing where these colors and shapes are.
That makes so much sense. So you're getting the colors mixed up, and then when you go to assembling the painting, you don't have to access this analytical, warm, cool part of your way of thinking, or?
Not as much. It's also building that, building that relationship with the piece too. Just seeing where those, seeing kind of a family going on
That
here.
is so cool.
And I'm trying to get this like darkest. I see a little brown in here. I don't know how, obviously the cameras aren't great, so you're not going to pick up all the subtleties of colors. But this is like a little bit, this is a brownish blue. So I do mix a lot of, this is more like a burnt umber or earth red. And that indigo just gives you these, I love this combination. And depending on where I'm trying to get the form of the bird, like see here would be around this edge where you're trying to push and create shape and volume with a piece. Remember, your cools are always going to go back and your warms are always going to go forward. So here I'd add a little bit more of a warm, and here I go a little bit more cool. So that's just to give you a little insight into my thinking when I'm building this piece.
I hate to ask you this question now while you're in the middle of it, but could you tell me again the name of the hummingbird?
This is an Anna's hummingbird. And Anna's hummingbirds are found on the West Coast and southern part of the United States, west of the Mississippi. Yeah, we only get one. Hummingbird around here, which is the ruby-throated, and every once in a while, sometimes people say that a rufous hummingbird, but pretty much the ruby-throated is our hummingbird.
Do you know, I mean, and this, again, you might just want to ignore this question. Do you happen to know where this image came from? Because I was wondering if I could Google it.
Oh, yeah. It's,
see it up close.
It's from an Instagram feed.
Okay.
If you give me 1 second, I can look and see.
No, I could even maybe look at your well, I can.
No, it won't be on there because it's an artist that's on there. But I will have it linked up when I do post this piece of her work or his work. I'm not sure.
Do you follow the artist?
Yeah.
Okay, I might be able to see it in your followers, possibly.
That's why it begins with, it's like ICHI, something like that.
Okay, I'll see if I see it in your who you're following.
Okay, so that feels pretty good. So now I'm gonna you have two options with the watercolor paper because it will buckle up on you. Is you would tape it down. A lot of people tape it down and then wet and size things. I just wet both sides to keep it flat.
That's why I like the pads, and then I can pick it up afterwards.
Yes, you can do that, but I'm working from different sizes, and I'm also running out of paper. So the blocks are great because they will do that for you.
Right.
But one way to keep it flat is to wet both sides while you're working on it, or tape it down on a board. You can also, using artist tape. So, but I want it to be fairly saturated, so I'm gonna wet both sides. All right, and here comes magic here. So as you notice, like I don't know. I look at the bird and I look at the paper, and I try to get a feel for where I want the composition to be. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. And in that initial wash, I'm just gonna show you because everybody gets freaked out about watercolor. So I'm just gonna say, okay, I'm gonna start this here, and then I'm gonna here and whatever, just do this. You can literally, at this point, I can say, oh, I don't like how that feels. You just take your brush and just wipe it all out.
No way.
It's all gone. So the watercolor is a little more forgivable than people think. Okay.
Yeah, so that's amazing.
All right. So I tend to start with the head on these because I want to get that gesture. There's something the way the head moves that will be where I start. Now, because I wasn't paying attention, I've got a lot more water than I would normally have in my palette, but that's okay.
I'm taking screenshots as we go, Holly.
Great.
Because I really like seeing moments.
So I have a lot of water right now on my palette and in my brush, and I'm going to show you. I don't know if Margaret showed you this. If I don't want to lose the paint that I just did, I can actually just roll the edge of my. I don't know if you can see me doing this here.
Yeah, we can. That's really great.
It will suck up the water that's in here, and it won't, while keeping the paint in there, so I don't lose it. So I know a lot of times like you'll get flooded.
Yeah.
The brush will get flooded, and you're like, oh, damn it, and I just mixed that color, and now I got. You can dry it up, and you can see like, because I didn't add any more water, and now that it's sucking up this water, so I can get this nice kind of shadow, greenish, earthy green behind the head here. Now, if you notice, I'm not tracing it. I'm not doing lines. I'm just going by the shape. Just trying to get that shape and the color. And I don't care if it mixes into each other, because if you think about it, everything has a reflective light next to it. So even the shirt that you're wearing, if you're wearing a color shirt, it's going to reflect into your face. And by letting the watercolor do what it does, it naturally blends those colors so that they connect. And you also, with these, if you notice, if I'm just looking at here, like you can see, like there's no hard stop, right? This is where you can let the watercolor do the work for you. It's going to create that in between of that beautiful like turquoisey green and this like more of a sappy green color. I'm going to let those mix next to each other, and you can see the overlapping. So that's kind of what's going on here. You can see that influence of the color of the neck going into those, underneath those feathers.
Holly, did it take a while for you to get the knack of like, because there I see it looks lovely, like they're next to each other and they're distinct and they mix but just a little bit. I feel like it would be easy to do what you did in theory, but have it just turn into one color. Is that kind of a knack thing, or?
Maybe. I mean, that's where you're getting familiar, right? With like how much water's in your brush, how much, how wet the paper is. Maybe you put too much in the paper. So you just kind of get a test for it. Like you start to, you can touch your paper and see how wet it is, or you can see how I'll see. You'll see me do this a lot. As I will put the brush on my hand like this, and it'll tell me how much water is in my brush.
Cool.
If I don't know, and before I hit here. And it just gives me, you start to build that sensitivity. Now say I didn't want that to I don't mind that it does, because remember that watercolor always dries lighter, but I can just pick that up a little bit and lighten that.
Going back into your brush when you put the
brush, like just by having the cleaner, drier brush, it'll just suck up. It acts as an eraser. Okay, let's make it.
Sounds like somebody's husband is vacuuming. That's what that sounds.
We're being vacuumed downstairs, so maybe it's us.
Excellent. I'm so glad.
But it's not me.
Oh.
I love how your initial rendering seems out of focus.
Yeah, and it's because if you think about it, I'm just trying to get the shape of the bird and the colors approximated, and it just creates this nice, beautiful foundation to build on. So you get that volume. If you think about it, watercolor is wonderful because it's a translucent medium. So you're building up the layers and it gives it a 3D effect with the bottom as you build, which is also where you run into the problem where you can overwork it too. If you try to put too many layers on, you kill it. Okay, so I'm going to start.
I've got to say, this is such a treat. Like, I'm pinching myself because it's just so great. And for all the time we've known each other, to be able to watch you slow like this and ask questions and hear other people ask you, so cool. And I'm writing it down.
Oh, thanks, Margaret. I'm going to do this for you next time.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing.
It's part of this. I think it's part of it is, it's part of the benefits of this time that we have right now.
Yeah.
And learning to use this technology too. So I'm going to come in here and you can see I'm adding this little bit of blue. I'm just dropping it in.
I'm glad you said blue because I was thinking just black, even though you told us already, I forgot.
And it has a little bit of that earth red in it too. All right.
So it definitely already looks like it's more of a brownish bluish black on the bottom and more of a coolish bluish gray on the top.
Right.
Is that because you were mixing it into the green? Like at the top, or you don't even have to try to explain.
Oh, well, I put in the red first, and then I put the combination of the umber and the blue here, which with more of the burnt umber, and then I added a little bit of the blue, and it spread. Now, say I wanted to add, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to put a little bit more of the red in here. You can see it'll spread it out the other way.
Yeah.
Right. So the order of which you put these on can influence too.
So the order going on top of the darker is going to warm up the top of that wing, basically.
Yeah, and I can push it. Yeah, it'll push it away more towards the edge. It'll do the work of like that edge work. That I'm gonna drop there's a little bit of pink in here. Drop that in.
Is my vacuum noise disturbing people? I could go somewhere else.
No, I feel it's not disturbing me. I hear just a little tiny bit, but it's not disturbing. Anybody else?
Okay.
It's okay.
And as Holly mentioned in the beginning, or as I mentioned, Holly mentioning, she did mention she likes it if you leave your mic open, just so she doesn't feel like she's in a room alone talking to the wall.
If it gets too much, I'll just move so that I'll quiet it.
Okay. So that's it. I don't want to touch the body anymore. I feel like that's a really good place to leave it. And now I'm going to come in. This is my smallest brush of these. And so I use the Harmony Squirrel Quills. I just love the range.
Holly, what size is that one?
This one's a 0.
Okay. You start with size 0.
So I'm taking a little bit of black. And now I'm going to go in for that beak. And I'm going to get the eye. I'm just going to put a little bit for the eye. And the paper's dried a little bit so it'll stay. There's always this kind of like line. Okay, and that's it for the bird. Oops. Oh. Sorry.
The camera took you at your word.
I know. You're done. Okay.
Holly,
okay.
is it possible to put the photo in for?
Oh yeah. So you can see that there.
Remember what?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And then I'm going to take in. So I can see a little bit. So this is my detail brush, which is a rigger. Robert Simmons.
What is Rigger the brand or?
No, it's a Robert Simmons white sable. It's a #1, but I believe these are called a rigger. I have a couple. Yeah, I have 2 actually.
Okay.
So Robert Simmons and a Downy, and these are like different. This one's a little bit smaller, so I have a 3 and a 1, and these are riggers.
Okay. Thanks.
And you'd think that with detail, you'd have a something that with the bristles would end right here. But again, it's that emphasis of having kind of a length that creates that freedom in the brush. So I'm going to put in these little feet. I see, and that's it. Just a hint of those, and I put those in first before I put in the foliage. Because I have found that if I put the feet in first, and even though it seems like it obliterates it, they sit better because it's that idea of that integration.
You have a focus for where you're going. You know where they're going to sit.
Yes. Yeah. Let's see. I'm just putting in the. And then the flowers are super loose.
I'm amazed, right? Just back to the feet thing. You put the feet on and then the branch, and it already looks, already the feet are wrapped around that branch.
Yeah, it is. Is that if you try the other way, it always feels like they're separate. But that's the other beautiful thing about starting this loose is everything has this like very integrated feel to it. I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna start putting in some of these little twigs that you see in between the flowers.
And I'm noticing how it's broken up. You're not drawing one hard straight line. There's broken bits.
Yeah, you can always do that. I can come into that later.
How wet is the paper? Is it much less wet?
It's less wet, yeah, than it was. And I'm just kind of putting the shape of this flower in here. And these, it's kind of like a burst, right?
Yeah.
So again, I'm putting those twigs in there. And then I'm gonna put in the, just a burst, a light, because I don't want to, remember we're starting off light. Usually with watercolor, we work light to dark. And I'm just gonna give a sense. And I chose these flowers because one, it'll bring tension between this pink and this pink, right? So you have this here and here, and it just creates an interesting dynamic in the piece.
Those flowers also seem to have a nice sense of volume.
Yeah, right there. Okay. All right, I'm gonna leave the flowers like that. I just wanted to get that kind of like just like, if you squint your eye, it's basically like you're squinting your eyes and just doing these little puffs of color. And then I want to get the leaf. And I'm sure Margaret's always told you is like just always trying to keep your water clean and your brush clean and your paints on your palette clean.
We're like, I'm again, it's not like regular watercolor. So often, I mean, we do try to clean out our water, but it can get pretty messy and the palette gets like chaotic. I usually clean out the palette when I have to, but I like to rely on those existing neutrals that are there.
Yeah, well, I guess that's part of leaving my palette too here. But as far as like your palette, it's not like your paints, trying to keep those clean.
they're gonna, yeah, I am not a good example of that. But because I usually work in a different way where it's just on the spot and I'm mixing inside my paints. So it's very
okay,
different.
yeah.
And it's all dry brush. It's kind of a
Oh,
totally
right,
different
right.
kettle of fish.
Yes, that's true. We should give each other a lesson sometime, Margaret.
Yeah, I definitely like it from my end, looking in on yours.
Okay, so that's it for this. I'll
That's
turn it.
gorgeous.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
going to turn it around. So I don't want to, if I go in and I try to do anything again, it's going to whisk it away, or I'm going to lose those beautiful shapes and those pure colors.
Mm-hmm.
Probably. Oh,
Okay.
actually, I guess you're not going to work on it anymore now anyway. So
No,
I wanted
but
to.
I can post it to you later if you guys want to
Okay,
see.
great.
And I can take a couple pictures on the in-between. So this one's been drying. I'm going to switch it out and see if I can.
Is
Okay,
it
there.
totally dry?
It's a little damp, but it's not. It's okay. It's okay. And you can see the papers curling up a little bit. You can go and you can if that happens to you, you can always save it by getting a spray bottle, squirting the back of it, and then lying it flat on in between some like two boards and weigh it down with some things. There's some good YouTube videos on how to do it. You want to make sure the board that you lay it on isn't gonna warp too. You know, you want something. I use some old canvas boards, and I lay it on in between them, and then weigh it down with books, and it flattens them right back out. That's the other nice thing of working on good watercolor paper, as you can feel it. So these are the pictures that we're using here. This is an Allen's hummingbird. And then these are, I've just started doing this, the Nevins berries. And I'm researching, when I do it, I'll put I'll research what flowers that those actual hummingbirds feed on, so that there's a certain amount of, I have quite a few birders that follow me, and they know. What. So it makes me feel confident. When I first started doing birds, I started doing watercolor 4 years ago, believe it or not, and I started doing birds at the same time. So when I first started doing birds, I just started doing birds, and then my mom was like, "Holly, you need to really learn about these guys," and which you naturally do as an artist, but I am getting geekier and geekier about it, and I love the finding out about these birds and the people that follow them.
I'm guessing that,
which is me now too.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
well, I'm guessing that birders aren't like a casual, but like, to be a birder, you must have an eye for detail, and like much more so than I do, for example.
Well, it depends on what you have a tremendous eye for detail, but yeah, the birds.
They would notice an incongruity between the plant and the bird in a way that I would not.
Absolutely, yeah, it's true. But I love it. There is nothing better than when a birder comes up to me and says like, "Oh, these are beautiful, and they're accurate." You know?
Are you setting parts of it now?
Yeah, sorry, I was going to step back a minute. So now we get to the place where I'm not drawing, but I am going to start drawing in areas with water to get the shape. So I want to maintain that looseness throughout the as I'm working on the piece. And so I think about it as like wetting smaller and smaller areas, using less and less water, and using smaller brushes as you go through this, as you get to the details. And the other thing about leaving details, so I'm going to get this shape. So I'm working on getting this shape. I don't know why I always seem to like start underneath here, underneath the throat. There's something about that gesture that I feel like will determine the energy of the piece. So for me, I tend to start underneath the throat and get that cock of the head of the bird. And then, so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to redefine that shape just with water. Now remember, like it bled all the way out to here, but I'm stopping the drawing here. And and now it really just becomes this point of matching the colors more. And I've been looking at this bird. This is, you know, like this is the second or third, probably the fourth or fifth time I've looked at it. 1, I chose it. 2, I printed it out. I mixed the colors. I did the initial wash, and now I'm going back to it. And this is that palette that I started from this bird too. So I'm not starting from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a fair amount of water in my brush, and I'm just kind of dabbing it in those areas. You can see how nice and loose that is. You can see how that's moving into there. Now I want that yellow actually to push. So I'm going to pick a little bit of that up. And I'm going to add some yellow back in there so it pushes that orange back over.
Wow. Amazing to watch it happen.
And then this is that darker orange down in here. Add a little more red to it. And it gets a little cool. If you can see that.
Yeah.
In here, it's a little bit cooler. So I'm just adding a little cooler of a red into that orange. And I'm going to just drop. I just love how watercolor fans out. And that's where you can see, like, if you trust the watercolor, the more you get familiar with it, you trust it's going to give you what you want. Okay. And there's a little bit, I'm going to take my smaller brush, there's a little bit of green underneath that chin too that I just want to get a little bit of that in there. There we go. Oops. Oh, did I lose you? Here I am.
Yeah, or you went dark.
Let's see, something happened. Oh, there we go. Okay.
And I do, speaking of the camera doing that, I would like to take a short break just to give everybody a chance to like shake out, including yourself. Yeah. But I want to do it at a time that works. So I don't know if it would be later on in this it would be up to you and what a good stopping point in the process is.
Yeah. I don't know. I'll leave it to you guys. What would you like to see? Would you like to, I can continue on this and then open it back up, or I can,
do you want to continue on it and then like, once it gets to like the end of this phase, then we could take a little break?
Oh.
Does that make sense? Like, I don't want to break it at a bad point.
Yeah.
But I don't want to rush the break, but I want to make sure that we like keep loose and anyway, yeah. I'm speaking for myself.
Yeah, I'm open. Trying to think.
Would this be like another 10 minutes here?
Yeah, why don't we just finish this and then I'll just do a little more of the bird and then I'll show you some details. I'll just do this area here of the face. And then we can break. And we can
and then come back if you have time and keep going. But I felt like it would maximize, for me, it will maximize the enjoyment of this if I like break and then come back a little fresh to and I want to make sure you don't burn out, even though I know that you like never burn out because you have the ability to work for stretches of time that seem superhuman to me.
Well, that's just a muscle. That's just a muscle you build, right? So I'm just coming in here. I'm going to get the head. So I'm just going to get the head real quick so you guys can see that.
Are you going right up to the color to allow it to bleed
I am a little bit. You can leave a space if you want. I am leaving a space here because I don't want this to bleed in. I want to leave a harder space there. So I'm leaving that. Not doing that. Come up against, I want to get all the orange that I see. Get that. And then I'm only going because it's a weird spot for me to stop at that moment.
Oh yeah, no, keep going. I just wanted to put that out there, but I want your process to flow.
Okay. And that's in shadow, so you can see you're not getting any real pure color there. We'll get the top of the head here.
Wow, like that stroke just did so much to reveal things.
Right, the
Around
body
the
of the, yeah. Kiss the screen. And you notice I left the eye area. I'm actually gonna pick up some of this where it bled into it so I can keep that eye socket. And then I'm gonna wet that beak area as it comes in. Gonna take that rigor again. And I want that to come in because the beak really does integrate into the body and the head of the bird. I'll loosen that up a little bit. Don't be afraid to turn the paper. There we go. And you can see I got a little bit mark of green on there. And I'll take it out so you guys can see. We just take it out. Yeah.
Wow.
And then, and then I'm just gonna get that eye in, and then we can. And let's look at break. So, gonna come in.
And Holly, that area's wet, right? Like we just saw you. That eye had water on it. It's not a dry place, right?
Well, it was a dry place actually. I left that dry, and then I'm going to take the little bit of that dark, and if you can see this dark in here, and it's kind of connected to the beak. So I want to create that line when it's wet, so it creates a foundation in there.
I can't believe the line you're getting with that big mop brush, or maybe it's not technically a mop brush. Not sure.
Like, so that's all I would do for this, and I would keep it like this for now.
Really, you wouldn't go down into the body, or?
Oh, I would, but I was going to give us a break.
Okay.
A break. And what I can do is I'll continue working on this, and then if you want to come back, let me.
Are you sure? I imagine a lot of people will stay with you. I'm thinking you might even be thinking, don't tell her to break.
Keep watching.
You don't want to break, Holly?
No. Well, let me ask you. Like, do you guys have any questions at this point, or what? Like, how it, what?
And I'll put it on. I can spotlight you, so we can ask if that makes it easier to ask questions.
Yeah.
I think you're explaining it very well as you work.
Yeah.
I'm impressed how wet you work and yet how precise. I mean, the mix of the two. It's fascinating. Yeah, I just had to move because my iPad was running out of juice. Sorry.
No, I would experiment it with yourself. Like even just making, like have a sheet of paper where you just make some bubbles or shapes. and drop in color and see how they react to each other.
Yeah.
How far they go, or like putting dark down first and then laying in some lights, or putting lights down first and laying in some dark. Because different colors have a little bit of how they spread and react to each other can influence the painting too.
I learned Holly how to erase. I love it, like magic. You just erase it and things gone. I mean,
It's pretty fun. I want to show you, like, I just want to show you. Can you go back to the painting for a second?
Yes, absolutely. Here I go. Wait, where did the painting go? I'll find it. I will in a moment. There we go. I see it. Here we go. Back to the painting.
So sometimes you'll find, like, say I've laid this in, and then you'll have some lighter sections, and you don't want to lose them, because there will be artists that use what's called a maskoid, right? And they'll draw everything beforehand, and they'll place in exactly where their whitest whites will be. Because of how I do this, I don't know where my white and my eye is going to be and things, and I do use a little bit of gouache towards the end. But if I want to pull out some whites now, say that there's this little white behind the eye,
right.
I'll come in and I can pull that up just with a dry brush. You can see how it starts to
peel. Yeah.
It just soaks up the paint.
Ooh, yep.
Right?
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of light under that eye. Maybe I don't want to lose that, because usually you'll see. So I'm just pulling it up. So there's a lot that you can do with watercolor. Where it is a much more forgiving medium than we think, especially in the initial phases. Gonna add some of that.
When I saw you before you erased it, you did the thing where you touched the brush to your skin to find out how wet it was.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure it was dry enough. Yep. Because if I add, so let's just play here. If I add water to it.
Oh wait, you went black.
Oops. Oh. I'm running. There we go. We might have to take a break because my computer's running. My phone's running low.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna, let's see, I'll just drop water. You can also use water as an eraser. So you can see, I don't know if you could see that. It was just real subtle, but it can add water and it'll spread things and lighten it up for you too.
Oh, okay.
When it's at this phase.
Yes.
So if you feel like, oh, I didn't want it to be so dark over there, well, you can just either add a little more yellow, or you can add a little water, and it'll push it away.
Oh, okay.
And then that keeps it feeling so much like so much more organic than if you go in there and try to paint with a dry brush, or you go in and try to make those lines afterwards.
Okay.
You're using the watercolor you're using water to do the work for you.
Oh, all right. Great. That's just such a wonderful lesson.
All these little things we learn.
And I like the way the colors, they fuse so smoothly and around. It's just wonderful. It's so the key is to learn how to use with lots of water.
Yeah, well, if you think about it, water, that's a mistake that a lot of people make, is they'll use too much paint in the beginning. And if you just think about it, it's watercolor, and just water comes first, then the color, and you add.
Oh, okay. That's a new
little trick, little thing.
And maybe could you say a little bit more about your brush, Holly, and why?
So my mom gave me she gave me a bunch of Chinese brushes. I don't know if you can see these here, and these are really wonderful too. They give a different mark making, but I use these, and then I found these squirrel brushes, which are kind of an in-between say something, which is where I started, which was something like this, which is your basic.
Is that synthetic, what you've got in your hand now? So that's going to hold a lot less water. That it's more controlled. I find it's much more controlled, and I really, really, really like the natural bristles, and I like that the saturation of water that you can get, and also that variation from very thick to very thin lines that you can make. And these are this set is a little more expensive, but you can just go in and buy these Chinese brushes for not that much. These Sumi brushes, and
give yourself the opportunity to loosen up and try something, something a little new.
That's like a really big part of your process, Holly, because of the water and the wetness. I typically use a synthetic brush because I'm using a dry brush technique. So that'll help Jenny. Like, I'm not sure if like having a natural bristle brush will help with this wet technique. And so you might have one, but experiment with your different brushes to see which one really lets the water go and absorbs it.
Don't be I would say don't be afraid to take out a big piece of paper and just experiment.
Yes, that's what I need to do, Holly. I need to just play more with just colors in general. I need to do that.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to make bad paintings. I listened to an interview that was really seminal for me, and it was like the guy artist said that he's like, for every bad painting, he's one step closer to a good one.
Yeah.
Amen.
True.
So
I'm gonna take a quick break.
Yep.
Go use the bathroom and get a drink of water and just stretch my legs. I'm gonna leave everything as it is though, so you can all decide what you want to do. And I don't know if you need a break, Holly, to charge your phone for a bit.
Yeah, I might need to charge. I need to charge my phone, and then I can. I don't know how far I am along, or I can work on this for a few more minutes.
Okay.
And then, while you take a break, if anybody wants to ask me questions, because I just want to start. I just want to get this body.
So go for it.
While I've got this going.
I'll watch.
I'll watch too.
I'll watch.
I'm watching. I'm having some tea. Drinking tea.
I'm getting
Wach from Hope Artist Village. So not far from Pawtucket, in a building called the Mills. So I wet everything except for this white area, because if you notice, there's this whiteness underneath here that I don't want to lose. So I'm going to leave that white, and I'm going to wet this whole body, get that shape, and then just start to lay in the color.
But in this second pass, you're being much more accurate with the contours of the bird, like not letting it bleed past that.
Right, because if you notice, you've already seen the dry here. Look at that beautiful line.
Yeah.
That's made, and that's just from like wetting the paper to the edge and letting it dry. And your eye doesn't go into where it bled. It really just kind of stays there.
It's kind of soft but crisp at the same time. It's really a wonderful effect that you've developed.
Thanks. I really, Margaret and I both went to the same grad school. That's where we met. We were actually roommates in grad school for a while. And both of our after we had our babies, both of our partners had families here, and we came back, and we were reunited. And but that school, you get very tight, and I love classical work that is realized, but it's not my personality. So this is kind of a nice balance of that. And that's why I think, the best thing to do is just experiment with a bunch of things. And as you develop as an artist, I know a lot of you are beginning, you naturally gravitate towards the materials, and you develop your own style.
So how do you make that edge? You just put the paint. You put the paint at the beginning of the edge, and you go in to make a little fine line. You start from the outside and inside. Oh, now you're erasing a little bit, right?
I am, because I'm realizing that this, I've got the mark of the bird is not round like that. It has like this nice thing.
Oh.
But that's okay, because I can go back when it
Yeah.
dries later, and I can go and I
Mhm.
can, because if I
Oh.
go in and try to get that line now, it's what's it gonna do? It's gonna spread
Okay.
out, right?
I see.
But
Yeah.
I'm just,
So you're gonna let it dry a little bit, and then.
I'm gonna let it, and then I'll go back in. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
get that for that edge, right?
Mhm.
And then, and the shadows, it's always gonna be a little cooler.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna do a little bit of this. Is like a greenish. I'm gonna do a little bit of green with that raw umber. And it's always good to start with, you know, instead of adding just automatically adding white or like say black to your colors, you always want it's by adding a little bit of green or a little more red, depending if it's going to add it lighter or darker. Or like say if you have a yellow, instead of adding more white, add a lighter yellow or more yellow to your green. Just keeps that color.
I mean, you're so soft.
Okay, I'm gonna leave that for now. And then I'm gonna go and I'm gonna try to get those little feet. And the secret to like feet and eyes and everything is you don't want to really think about them as feet. You just want to see like they're there. Shapes.
Oh. So how do you on your studio, do you open your studio, or right now you're closed obviously, but oh yeah, Margaret said that every weekend you exhibit your artwork, right? Or you go places?
I go places.
So do you go to the Woodstock fair that they open on sometime the weekend of Columbus Day weekend, the weekend after, I think it is?
Oh, to the Roseland Cottage?
Yes.
Yep, I've done that show a couple times. That's a great show.
Oh.
So I travel up to Maine, down to New Jersey normally.
Oh. Wow.
So let's see. I'm just gonna go in. I think this is dry enough now, and I'm gonna go in. I'm gonna give you a sense of that eye. So I'm just gonna wet that circle of the eye here. And okay. And I'm gonna leave. I'm not gonna go too far, but I want to keep that white because that's a little bit of where the white of the eye is. So I'm just gonna leave that. I'm wetting that a little bit. I want to get some of that darkness. Okay. So I think that's a good place to stop for this one.
Okay.
And I'm gonna leave. I'm not gonna go into this right now, just because I do have to get back to work soon. But you can see the difference. I just want to show you the difference of the first pass and the second pass. You can see how it's starting to come together.
Yes. It has more.
Right?
You're giving more definition. More. You see the little line just going, just a little line of color there. Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
I see the difference of the two.
And I'm surprised how dark you go around the eyes and the feet right away. You know, rather
Yeah.
than letting that be more transparent, you build up.
Yeah. I think you could go lighter, but it's okay. It's at this point it's a preference because these aren't just these big shapes.
Yeah.
But I did go back. I don't know if you noticed. I went back and I did them, but then I brought that stick right through it again.
Yeah.
So they weren't just sitting on top. I wanted to keep that balance even in the second and third step.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I've got this is where it's like almost done, where I've done like 3 or 4 passes.
Yeah.
And you can see this is that beauty of the watercolor where you don't want to lose. If you do the smaller sections of wet, you're keeping that beautiful looseness.
Yeah.
Yes.
Even in the more defined areas. And then I'll come in, I can show you just like what I would do, like when you want to get these feathers, these little, I'll show you a couple spots. So I use a little bit of gouache, white gouache, towards the end because of my process, I don't use and I really want to make sure how much water's in there with these things because I'm looking for a very specific point. Did I lose you?
Yep.
Okay, should go. There we go. I've got 10% left on my phone here. So let's.
Oh. Okay.
That just brings
So
that
we'll
forward
go.
edge forward.
Yeah. And it really is when the personality of the bird starts to come together is when you get those little details.
Yeah.
Gonna grab. This is the reference I'm working from here.
Yeah.
So you can see how much it changes.
Yes, definitely. I mean, all the little details on the tail. So Holly, we saw you not using at all pencil at all. You haven't used pencil at all to do this. You did. So you basically using your watercolor to draw and from beginning to end.
Yep.
Just the colors.
Just the colors. When I first started doing the birds, I was drawing them. And they felt so stiff. And when I went to go see my mom, I started doing watercolor and she just gave me one lesson of just the wet on wet. I'm like, oh, okay, got it.
Oh, also your mom is an artist too.
And I actually hated watercolor my whole life. Because I treated it like a fill in the blank. Where I would draw and then I would just fill in. And it wasn't until I allowed it to open up and that I was able to really enjoy the full beauty of the character. So you can see I'm just really, really light. You can start to see that eye come alive, just the little details.
And also when you use your pencil before you put the water, if you make a mistake, you cannot erase it because you cannot erase the pencil after you apply water.
Right, and it doesn't like if you're doing that drawing, like as I'm doing these watercolors, like anything that you're doing, you start to really develop the relationship with it. So a lot of times you'll see drawings where like you know I don't know if you've experienced. I think everybody's experienced it. You're like, oh wait, no, the beak isn't there; it's way over here.
Yes.
Because you're looking at it. You're looking at it more, right? And you're getting to understand the information. So so that's what. So that allows that to, it allows you as you're looking at it more, it allows you to move those things into place more organically.
Wow.
Instead of being stuck at that initial drawing where you're just beginning to know the bird or whatever, the subject matter. See these little details. So let's see if I can see close up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. The combination of colors and everything.
It's stunning.
But my computer is about to die and my phone is about to die. And it'll take a while to charge it back up. But I'll post the finished piece of the two that we did today by the end of the week. And please feel free to reach out. And
I'm gonna switch it back to your face before you disappear.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go back to your face. Just if thank you.
Thank you.
Can we? Well,
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ladies. It's so nice meeting all of you.
Great. Like, and it's just amazing to watch your process. Thank you so much.
It is.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I really enjoy all your techniques, Holly. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, anytime. Like
Courage.
this was just great, Holly. Fantastic.
Thanks for inviting me, Margaret. And then Margaret and I are going to do a little interview on Friday
That's right.
at 1:00 on Instagram. If any of you guys are
Oh, cool.
on that, I think we can record that, Margaret. We'll save it.
Okay. And I'll make notes and make sure my notes are all right, and I'll send the notes to everybody.